What happens when two dudes, one a retired Navy SEAL commander in Colorado Springs, and the other a hippie meditation teacher in New York City, get together to discuss living mindfully? That's a great question, because we don't know what will happen either. Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show.
All right, here we are. Surprise, Will. Check that background out.
I know. Oh, yeah. We got some ice in the background. Oh, why is that, John? Very nice. Very nice.
Talking mindfulness, and we're talking about cold immersion today. And I wore a blue hoodie and a blue shirt, all in kind of thoughts for the theme today on cold immersion. We're going to be going into that. We're excited about this show, as we always are. We love all our shows. We love our guests, but this topic is one Will and I talk about. We talk about it often with one another, but we haven't really gotten into depth into it on the show yet. And we're going to be doing that today. Cold immersion, the benefits of it, ways to do it, how to start, and what gets in the way of people doing it, and then much more. And we're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing that today with a good friend of mine, former Navy EOD Tech and co-founder of the holistic health company Stasis, Josh Duntz. And we'll get into an intro for Josh and everything else. But first, Will has some announcements.
Yes. Great to be here, John. We have our merch, MTM merch, holiday merch sale going on right now to the end of day, November 7th. We have new holiday soft cotton green tees for the holidays, which is great. We also added to our merch, we have some new trucker hats, baseball hats, right? Winter beanies. Of course, we have our men and women hoodies and all of our sizes, our men's and women's. Again, this sale ends on November 7th. So get your merch for the holiday. There's also support small business as well. So if you're interested in buying and supporting the show, please head over to mentalkingmindfulness.com/merch. John will drop that in here as well. And it's US and Canada only at this point. Sorry about that if you're outside of those two areas, but thank you so much for supporting the show. I'll get this, John. We need our grounding practice. Again, mentalkingmindfulness.com/merch to get some merch for the holidays. And again, thanks for supporting the show.
There you go. All right, let's bring our guest up. We'll go into a bio and then get our grounding practice. Josh, good to see you, brother. How are you?
Hey, what's up, man? Good.
Look at that hair, man. I love it. Love it. Definitely rocking the civilian life, man.
For sure. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, Josh, here's your bio, man. Josh, so that you know who you are. No, obviously it's for our audience. But
sometimes I forget.
Josh spent 10 years. All right, we all do. It goes by in the blink of an eye, man. Anyway, Josh, he spent 10 years in Navy EOD community before transitioning into the startup world. And he is the co-founder of Stasis, as I said at the beginning, which is a holistic health education and training platform. And he recently joined the partnership team at Shift, a career advancement company for military members past and present. Outside of work, he enjoys reading, podcasts, and long-distance running, and is an expert on cold water immersion therapy. And we're going to learn a lot more about Josh and cold immersion here in a second. But first, as Will alluded to, we all need a grounding practice to get settled. So let's do that. So if you're in a place that's safe, go ahead and get comfortable and close your eyes. If closing your eyes is comfortable, otherwise just soften your gaze and maybe just stare down your nose, down the bridge of your nose. And let's intentionally bring our attention to our breath. Don't feel like you have to force anything just yet, but just notice it. Notice the physical sensation of breathing. Notice the physical sensation of your body sitting or lying or standing. You're sitting down, maybe you can feel your sit bones in your seat. Maybe you can feel the air blowing over you, either down in Miami, you may feel the air conditioner, and here in Colorado Springs, you probably feel some heat. Feel your feet on the ground, kind of rooting into that ground. And now let's take 3 deep breaths together. Begin by breathing out all your air, bringing your navel to your spine. Breathe in deep, in through your nose if you're able. Hold at the top for 3, 2, 1. Let it go nice and slow. 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 Hold at the bottom for 3, 2, 1. Breathe in through your nose. Hold at the top. 3, 2, 1. Relax, nice and slow. 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 Hold at the bottom. 3, 2, 1. Last one. In through your nose. Hold at the top. 3, 2, 1. And relax, letting it go nice and slow. 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 And now when you're ready on your own time, come out of the practice, start to blink your eyes open or refocus your gaze. And here we are, Josh. Good to see you, brother, again. How you doing, man?
I've been doing pretty good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, we're excited for the conversation. And just a little bit more background from the bio we'll get into. I'll give you an opportunity, but just so you guys know how Josh and I know one another. We were in the Navy together, but we never worked with one another. We crossed paths actually in a transition organization called Elite Meet. And then I started digging into what Josh was doing, and he started telling me about the cold immersion that he was doing with Stasis, the company that he was a co-founder of. And we'll get into that. But then we went into another transition program together at Tuck Next Step at Dartmouth Business School. And I heard everything that he was doing, and I'm just in awe of where he was and where he has gone from there even. So, Josh, excited to get into the conversation, but let's lay the foundation for everyone, man. Tell us a little bit about your background, obviously in the Navy and EOD, and then how that led into what it is you did in the cold immersion world.
Yeah. So the last couple of years when I was on active duty is kind of when I really just started to become kind of going all in on human performance stuff. It was obviously a big part of the job, as you know, but when I left the command and I was on shore duty for the last couple of years before I got out, there was a lot of time on our hands to not do normal workday activities. And we had a pretty sick gym. There was only 6 of us at this shop. So it was kind of that culture where you come in, work out, do whatever, if there's work to be done, get it done. And then kind of the rest of the time is yours. And so we bought a sauna and a cold tub for the command there to have as part of our gym. And that's right when Wim Hof was getting really big and popular, I guess more mainstream. And I first heard about that, and I was okay, what's all this about? And that's how I originally got into the exposure work, both in the cold side and then with heat with sauna. And I just loved it since the first time I did it. So yeah, that's kind of how I originally got into it, and it's just kind of been a part of my, routine since then.
What was your first experience like, Josh? That first moment can you describe it for us?
Yeah, I remember we had, so before we got the little DIY chest freezer set up, we kind of converted that into a makeshift cold tub. We just had one of those big horse troughs. And I remember just leaving it outside in Virginia Beach, and it was winter time. So I don't know how cold it was, but it was, there was ice on the top layer. And it was I just remember it was a cold, rainy shitty Virginia Beach winter day, you know? And it was like the worst time to be like getting into a cold tub from like a mental perspective, because like it would have been so much easier if it was like down in Miami, it's like 100 degrees outside, you know? But me and my buddy, one of the other EOD guys, Brad, we both like were like, all right, we're gonna get into this thing, and like we had 2 set up, so it became like this competition, you know, who's gonna stay longer. And that was kind of like the first experience. But yeah, I mean, it definitely was very challenging, like the first time to do it. It shocks the system. And I think that's where like the mindfulness piece really ties into, where, you know, the more you can be like aware of your breath and aware of the sensations and like consciously kind of control that stress response, is when you finally are able to like let go, and eventually, you don't feel the cold as much after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
How'd you feel after that first time? Like, what was like, did you just to kind of take people through
it? Yeah. It's just, you get that like euphoric endorphin rush when you get out. Same thing if like anyone's done cryotherapy that's listening, kind of that same response. And it's, you know, basically like all of your blood is getting sucked up into your core while you're in. And then when you get out, it all kind of releases and flow back to the extremities, and it's all super oxygenated. So it's just like a great feeling. You feel, it's like a high you feel, I think, for probably like a good hour or so after you get out. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I excuse me. I remember in SEAL training, we have these inflatable boats, and sometimes we have a workout on this area called the grinder. It's this big concrete, like flat spot where we all stand on some painted frog feet on the ground. And we do our workouts there, and if you screw up, which we all screw up at some point, they have you come up in front of the class, and you have to dive into this boat that's sitting there, this inflatable boat, and the inflatable boat is filled with ice water. It's water with chunks of ice, and you have to dive into it. And I always thought it was so terrible initially, and then I looked forward to it because I knew when I jumped in there, I would just get a little bit of a relief from the pain that I was in, from my muscular pain. And then I started sitting in cold tubs going through training, because I knew what it did for the inflammation of my joints, my muscles, but I didn't know all the other benefits that come with it. So you've touched on the euphoria that happens, and you know, that hour-long thing afterwards, how you feel. But can you talk about some of the other benefits that come from cold water or cold immersion just in general?
Yeah. This is where I think like it's important to kind of start from the beginning of like people's intentions of what they're looking to get out of the cold exposure, because like a lot of people will just kind of rattle off like benefits of cold exposure, but really depending on like how you're using it, when you're using it, and what the intention are, there can be like totally different outcomes, you know? And so I think that's super important for people to understand before they get into it, is like, just like with anything else, right? Like mindfulness practice.
Psychedelics.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is the intention of me doing this practice? And there's kind of like a couple different buckets. There's one that you can look at for just like stress resiliency, right? Or like a mindfulness practice. There's 2, I think, for like athletic development and recovery. And there's like different buckets that even can go underneath that. Like, are you training as an endurance athlete? Are you someone that is like trying to build hypertrophy and worries about like muscle mass? And then like, kind of like the third piece is just like, I'm doing this to like enhance my morning routine or help me sleep better at night. And then like, depending on which bucket you land into, there's going to be like certain benefits that are going to be most important for that outcome. And so like, just for instance, like if you're a bodybuilder and you're trying to gain muscle growth, doing cold exposure after a workout is probably the worst thing you would want to do, because it actually inhibits that muscle tissue from like tearing down. Like you mentioned, John, like it helps with not having, it's like anti-inflammatory, but in order to build bigger muscles, your muscles break down and they build back bigger, and that's how they get bigger and stronger. So again, it's like there's so many different ways that you can use it, and it's really important for people to know what they want to get out of it before they start.
Nice.
Well, as an ultra, you're ultra runner, right, Josh? You've done ultra marathons before. How has that helped you? I mean, how have you included that? How, what are the things that you've seen by, going on these long runs? I can only, like, what's the longest you ever run?
52 miles.
52 miles. That's a lot of mileage.
Double marathon.
Double marathon. So how do you incorporate, this cold immersion and cold therapy into, and how has it helped, enhance your results and stuff?
For sure. So I kind of typically would use it in two ways. One, part of my regular just like morning routine, kind of like wake you up in the morning. And the real intention that I'm trying to get out of that is, one, like it sucks to do first thing in the morning, right? So it's like building that mental resilience. But then two, like it releases all those endorphins and a bunch of neurochemicals like norepinephrine, which is adrenaline basically in the brain. It's been shown to help with like neuroplasticity. So just like a bunch of good like neuro benefits from it outside of like anti-inflammatory. And then I don't really care about muscle growth with my training right now. So like I'll do it, as soon as I get back from a run to help with like that anti-inflammatory and the delayed onset of muscle soreness, DOMS. So those are kind of like how I typically implement it. And then we were talking a little bit before we started getting recording with all this like new science that's come out of Stanford's lab recently, where they're kind of showing that there's maybe a better way to do this, which is like, directly after a workout, specifically for like endurance athletes or someone that's not necessarily like focused on the hypertrophy muscle growth. Yep. Basically what they were showing is like your muscles start to like break down and you can't do work as like a runner because your muscles heat up. And eventually they get so hot that they just stop contracting and constricting. And so like jumping into a cold tub with a full body immersion is going to like actually inhibit your body from releasing heat, because it will just constrict all of the blood vessels, especially like I said, in the palms of your hands and the bottom of your feet. So what they've shown to be more effective is actually like water just below whatever the ambient temperature is. So like cool water, not necessarily like freezing cold. And you would just dip the palms of your hands and the bottoms of your feet into that water. Wow. And basically, and so that's how they've shown like to extract the most heat from your body that way. And like I said, they are literally they just released like a product for athletes that's like a mitt that you put your hands into, and you leave them in there for like 3 minutes, I believe, and it's meant to be used like for someone in the gym to like in between sets. So like you think you go do like 20 pull-ups, your biceps and stuff heat up really fast when you do that. So you can kind of cool them down in between sets. Wow. And be able to, it was pretty crazy. They showed with professional athletes. So mind you, these are people that are already in like peak shape, right? I think it was a 300% increase over the course of 2 weeks by implementing like these cooling procedures in between their workout sets.
That's crazy.
Well, 300% increase in the amount of strength that they had, or
total volume of like repetitions that they were able to do.
Oh my God.
This. Yeah. So I think what they did is the one I saw was dips. So
I love
the guy
dips,
went from being able to do like 20 dips to, 100 dips or something in the course of a workout over the course of like 2 weeks.
Wow.
God, just by cooling down and kind of like drawing the heat out of your body, right? And you said earlier, like the heat when you're working towards hypertrophy, right? When you're really exercising those muscles, the heat actually prevents the muscles, if I'm getting this correctly, from kind of remending or kind of right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll like eventually like think about like if we just like a bicep curl, like that constriction of the muscle, the heat will eventually like, that's why, your third set, it's like really hard to do those last couple of reps apparently, is because the muscle is so hot that it's just unable to constrict anymore.
Wow. That's really, oh my God. I'm really excited. All the, a lot of the things we've talked about in the show, Jon, the breathing, we can talk about the breathing and how this helps in a moment, but also like just even the cold therapy, I'm interested to see, the next generation of athletes that come from, carbon dioxide, deficiencies and stuff like that, as well as this cold immersion, like what's
hypoxia,
really tapping, really tapping into another level of the body's potential by, messing with the temperature, and also messing with the, the biochemistry on the inside with the air that we continually bring into our body. Amazing.
Yeah, the human performance space right now is there's so much money being poured into it, both from private sector and the DoD, that I think it's going to be crazy to what we see 10 years from now, as far as what humans are capable of doing.
The bionic man.
Yeah, but they might not be humans anymore. Who knows?
That's awesome. So I know we had Errol Dobler on our show a few months ago, and he's a Wim Hof practitioner and teacher, instructor, and he talks about in his book about the effects of cold therapy, but he also talks about what one feels prior to getting into a cold tub or a cold shower, and then how they judge themselves, right? So you're standing outside your cold shower, you haven't turned it on yet, and you start having these thoughts about, oh, this is going to suck. So you start, right? So you start having the kind of the meta emotions, the meta thoughts about, you have thoughts about your thoughts and emotions about your emotions. And I'd love to know what gets in the way of people getting into cold tubs or cold showers, and how to overcome that, and then what your feelings, I guess everyone here, let's all three talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
About our own emotions before we get into a cold shower or a cold tub.
Yeah. I think a lot of people try to make the mistake of trying to do too much too fast when they're implementing it. So I always recommend to people, when they want to get started, start off by just taking a normal warm shower, hot shower, whatever temperature you take a shower, do all your normal shower routine, and then end the shower with cold, and just do that for a couple of days to get started. And then you can always increase the duration or make the temperature colder if you're capable, because a lot of people, I see this both with showers and then with the tubs too. And you can see videos of people doing on YouTube where they just jump into the tub and then they have that huge shock reaction of the cold water. And that's that fight or flight response happening. And that's exactly what I don't want people to do. I don't want that reaction to happen. And you can control that with, just being mindful of how you're getting into the water, slowly getting in. You can with some breath practice and retention, that initial shock. Normally when people go in the cold water, their first reaction is to take that big gasping breath, right? You see that?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you actually will hold and inhale. So take a big deep breath, hold your breath, and then get into the water while you're on a breath hold. That helps stop that reaction from happening too. So it's just kind of little things that people can do as far as implementing it, that are going to ease the transition into it over time. And it's just starting a strength routine or a workout routine. You're not going to start benching 315 on day one. It's you slowly build up volume and intensity as you go through the workout program. It's the same thing with cold exposure too.
Yeah. Well, keep going, Josh. What are you learning about yourself? And I think Jon, I want to hear your experience. I want to talk about my experience, but what are you learning about yourself emotionally? As before, during, after, and then maybe, even stepping outside when maybe life gets intense, has cold immersion and helped you just, be a more mindful person in that regard?
Yeah, it's definitely been just one of the pillars, along with meditation and breathing, where I feel like I'm now in control over my response to outside situations that I don't have control over, which is like the biggest thing that I wanted to get out of it personally. And then two, like it's also shown me that like every day is different, right? And it's some days feel really easy and feel great, and other days like really suck. And that's life, right? But having the discipline to even do it on those like shitty days, just kind of adds to that resilience factor where when outside stressors, which they're coming, everyone has them, right? Like just being able to deal with those little things that much easier, not having them affect your emotional or physical like capabilities and environment is why I think these practices are so important for people to at least like, go down that path and explore if you're interested in it.
Yeah, definitely. And Will, you asked me my thoughts and my relationship. So funny enough, a couple weekends ago, I was on a playground with my daughter, and she was climbing this little apparatus on the playground, and got to a point where she couldn't go any further. She got a little scared, climbed off the thing, and she was crying. She's 4 years old. And I was like, "It's okay, baby. You don't have to do it." And she's like, "No, big kids must do hard things." And I was like, "Damn, that's right on, girl." Awesome. And she got back up there and she did it. But that right there comes back to what Josh was talking about with the resilience. And we talk about resilience on the show quite often, resilience and grit, and how you got to get comfortable doing uncomfortable things, or get comfortable being uncomfortable, and what that does for your mind outside of the cold plunge, outside of the cold shower, in everyday life. So if you do that regularly, it's going to set you up to be more resilient when life throws those punches, right? And it is uncomfortable. And when you stand there, I don't start with a warm shower. I personally jump right into a cold shower. But now I think I'm going to start doing what you said, Josh, because it is maybe I'll start with warm and ease my way into the cold. But yeah, I jump right in. But I have that right as I'm like, I've got my hand on the handle, the shower handle, and I'm thinking, damn, this is going to suck. Right. And then I start thinking, I'm like, all right, stop being a weenie about this. And then I start thinking about that thought. And there's a lot of judgment involved in the few seconds before I actually hit the cold shower. But I've learned over time, okay, stop judging yourself. You don't have to force this. And I know Wim Hof talks about, you don't force it. You don't just do it. And I've learned to just do it. And when I do have those judging thoughts, to realize that's that negative self-talk coming in, and to work to get over that. And then I will, after the cold shower, I will go and meditate on how I felt before, during, and after. And so that's helped me throughout the day after a cold shower or a cold plunge. I haven't taken a whole lot of cold plunges lately, but the cold shower is what I'm doing. That's what I think I'm continuing to be comfortable doing uncomfortable things by doing a cold shower. That's one of the things that I do regularly in order to maintain my level of grit, in order to maintain my level of resilience. I mean, you don't get that many opportunities as an adult to put yourself intentionally into an uncomfortable position. And this is one of those opportunities to do that. So over to you, Will.
Yeah, I've, actually today is funny. This morning we're having this conversation. I was just kind of, I normally get up every morning and it's right into the cold. Like it's only like maybe a 2-minute shower. It's like I do the whole thing. Like I wash myself, I'm doing the cold, I'm breathing as I'm doing it. I definitely have that experience before I step in. Like every single time, it's like, oh shit, another cold shower, and it's like, and also, but and as the temperature gets colder here in the north right now, in the Northeast, like it becomes a little more mentally challenging and emotionally challenging to get into the cold. But the reason I continually do it, I mean, because like number one is really the health benefits for me. Like another one is just that the emotional resiliency that I continually find getting uncomfortable and understanding myself as more of a force, and and I can really create my own experience by just doing something as simply as a cold shower. It's it helps me with the relationship when things get uncomfortable outside of the cold shower in my life, instead of, rising to the temperature of, or whatever kind of emotional situation is going on, I can just stay calm. I can find that breath. Like I usually typically, breathe in the shower, especially like you talked about earlier, Josh, that big initial, like, like when it's okay. Like I'll go in head first, right? I'll hit up my face. It's not so bad. My head, as soon as I turn around, it hits the back of my neck and my backside. That's when I get that,
dude, the back.
Right? Yeah, I know, right? Every single time. And then I just take those breaths, and it's funny. Like after like just 10 seconds, I'm like, it's all good. But I could also, what I'm learning, if it gets really cold, I can just put my hand on the warm wall and I can just literally shift my focus. So instead of it all being about the cold water, I can make it and kind of shift my intention and shift my focus onto something that's warm for me. It also helps me when I do like a few times a month, like, it's tough to do cold plunges in the city, and I don't have like a backyard that I could just make something in a cold plunge at this point. But I go to, there's a spa and kind of a bathhouse that I hit up, quite frequently every month. And this time of year, I'll actually, instead of going to like, the steam room or the sauna first, I'll go in cold first, because I want to be like, because it's exactly the thing I don't want to do. But it's the thing that is going to develop that grit and resilience, because if I can sit in that cold for like 2 or 3 minutes and knowing in the back of my head, like the reward's coming where I can like take like the hot sauna or, do the steam, and when I get in that cold, especially, usually I go like Fridays, so the week can be really intense. After that first initial uncomfortableness with the cold, like maybe 30 seconds or a minute, everything starts to calm down. Like if I'm able to find my breath in the cold, I can just really face myself, and I can make that distance between my emotional life and my breath. And also one thing I'll say about, this grit, resilience in the cold, what it does, and we talked about this with our wonderful guest, Dr. Seth Hickerson, which we're both working for at My Steady Mind, talks about that STEA process, STEA, right? Stimulus, thought, emotion, action, right? This is a massive stimulus, right? And it just shows you exactly who you are in that moment immediately. And if I continually create more of a gap, what we're trying to do is get away from here's the stimulus, and instead of going right into thinking and into an emotional response and taking action based on those thoughts, those feelings, and taking those actions, I can always be a better, in my family, when someone's being an asshole or something like that, or some friend, I can just take a breath, and instead of like battling them back, or, I can just be calm and just be grounded and stay centered. And instead of getting emotional and creating more of a fight, I can just be more passive and more peaceful. So it's been pretty incredible, like the cold plunge. I really recommend it for everybody. Well, Josh, what about? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Will goes on Friday after doing Men Talking Mindfulness, because it's so stressful. This show.
It can be.
Kidding, of course.
No, it's all good. It's all good. What about like? Go ahead, John. If you have a question, I was
just going to throw it back over to Josh, because you mentioned, Will, that kind of alternating between the sauna and the cold. Josh, do you know the science between the kind of the alternating there, and what's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, I think that from my understanding, the main benefit that you get out of that is because the heat is a vasodilator and the cold is a vasoconstriction, right? So you're basically kind of just like flushing that blood in and out through the core, which helps with like inflammation, oxygenation of the blood. From what I've seen, I think the best way to do it is cold, hot, and then you always want to end on cold and let your body re-warm naturally. And I think that has to do with just like getting the most out of that last cold session. So it's going to hold the blood to the core longer. Whereas if you got into the sauna and ended on the sauna, it's kind of, again, just going to be another vasodilator. And I think like 3 rounds typically is what I've seen like being recommended. I don't know if there's been like actual studies on this. And then you want to, I think the ratio is supposed to be like 3 to 1. So three times longer in the heat as you are in the cold.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Right on.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting about, you know, these spas and stuff like that. Like they've been around since, I don't know, thousands of years. Like every single culture, you know, has this, you know, they use the hot sauna and the cold. And I just want to throw that in there because it's just like, it is just such a part or something about that process that helps us to, I mean, obviously to heal and to be more grounded and more calm, but you know, it's just kind of, it's been around for thousands of years. Like I've always wanted to go to those baths in like Turkey, you know, they have those beautiful, oh my God, those beautiful salt baths and hot. Yeah.
The Roman bathhouses were super cool. And like people can look this up on Google. But they literally had 3 different rooms in them. They would start off in a hot tub. Then they would move into like a lukewarm tub. And then the last tub would be a cold tub that they would like finish off their experience with. Super cool. Yeah. I wish we still had like stuff like that. It'd be awesome.
Why doesn't Stasis make that, man?
Yeah. That sounds expensive.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I know we've talked about some of the, you know, the anti-inflammatory side. We've talked about the hormones, the endorphins that are released during a cold plunge or a cold shower. And you've talked about how it can wake you up. I want to touch on some of the other benefits, or at least reported benefits. I don't know. I'll be completely honest. I don't know the science behind this and whether or not deep studies have been done on these, but I've heard that cold water can improve your circulation and your immune system. It can help with sleep, and it can also increase testosterone. Do you know anything about those things, Josh?
No, I haven't. I mean, yes, I've heard all those things too, but I don't have like, again, that deep knowledge. The only other thing that I've seen that was really interesting, like actually in studies, was how cold exposure can help with like brown fat adipose tissue.
Oh, yeah.
So it can basically like turn white fat, which is like bad blubbery fat, you know, into like brown fat, which is just much more easily used as energy. So like you burn brown fat much easier. So people that want to be skinnier, like you want more brown fat. That's been pretty heavily studied and kind of confirmed that that's true too. Again, I don't know the exact like mechanism of how or why that's working. I believe once you get into that shivering state in cold is like that's like actually when the fat burning is starting to happen. So again, like if that's the intention of you doing this practice, you have to be very intentional about like getting to that state. But yeah, those are kind of like the other big things that I know have actually been studied before.
Well, you talked about shivering there, and then earlier you talked about, you know, just barely cool. What's like the ideal temperature that we should be trying to hit?
Yeah, again, I think it depends on what the purpose of it is. Some of the studies I've seen for like as far as like overall benefits with like anti-inflammatory and like the neurochemical release, it's been 42 degrees Fahrenheit. The water, I think if you want to use it strictly as like that mental kind of stress resiliency, the colder the water, the better, in my opinion. And the other good thing is like the temperature and the duration are like inversely proportional, right? Like, so if you get into 36 degree water, you could stay in for 30 seconds to a minute and get the same benefits out of getting into like a 55 degree water and staying in for 10 minutes. So kind of personal preference there. I'd rather jump in cold water for a minute instead of sitting there for 10 minutes. But that's like each person kind of has their own thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And then as far as like, I guess if you're looking for like that, like just heat transfer for like the athletic performance. Like I said, it's like water that's just slightly colder than ambient temperature.
Nice.
Wow. And one thing I'll say, it's like when I really get in the cold, I mean, so if I'm just not looking for the health benefits of it and I'm going in the water that says 36 or 40 degrees, it's like, I mean, yes, it really has those physiological effects at like 30 seconds or a minute. But then it's like, then the choice is to stay, for me, is to stay longer. Cause that's when I'm like, that's when I go deeper into my mind. Cause my body is like, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. But then I'm just like, that's when I begin to find my breath. That's when it becomes almost like, it becomes literally a meditation for me in the cold. And
you've seen like Wim Hof stay in there for like an hour or something. So it's
he does like 60, he adds a minute, like every, every first birthday he did. I think he's done. I think I heard him say like after 62 minutes, he's like, I think I'm good at 62 minutes. I can imagine a guy doing 90 years old doing fucking 90 minutes of cold plunge. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work. But, when I did, like I was in Spain with him for like 7 days and we did a bunch of cold plunging and they just backed like a freaking a truck full of ice and just poured it into this tub. And I stayed in, the longest I've ever stayed was 15 minutes. Okay. And it was like, it was incredible. It was really incredible. I mean, I think one thing that helped me in that setting, I wasn't in my own tub. We had like 7 or 8 people in the same tub together, seeing everybody kind of go through this experience. And there is like, I'll say if like, and I want to get talk to you also, Josh, about like, what are some really basic, simple steps to get people to do this. But I've noticed like doing with somebody else, like literally sitting in the tub with you, right, is it's been helpful to my mental game, to my physical game, and being able to develop more of that grit resilience and kind of staying in. But Josh, like if somebody hearing this podcast and, thinks this is really crazy, but like is curious because of the health benefits that we mentioned about cold immersion and cold therapy, what would be some basic, simple, fundamental first steps that you would suggest in order to begin to take on this as potentially a regular practice?
Yeah, I think the cold shower is the easiest place to start, right? Most people have, depending on where you live in the country, might dictate how cold that water can actually get, but you work with what you have. And like I said, I think the easiest way to do it is to start by doing it at the end of whatever your normal shower routine is. Mm-hmm. And then making it a consistent practice, deciding, is this something you're going to do every day? Do you want to do it 3 times a week, 4 times a week, whatever that number is? Do that for a couple of weeks. And then like you can progress from there with either, like I said, making the temperature colder if you're capable of doing that, or just staying in, like increasing the duration. And then eventually, once you're ready to like go to that next level, that's when you actually have to get, like, the cheapest option probably is the horse trough and just fill it up with bags of ice and water. If you're going to do it like multiple times a week, that gets pretty expensive with just how much ice you need. Again, depending on where you are, geographically. And then like the next level up from that is like buying a commercial like chest freezer that people would typically store meat in, and you can like easily convert that into a cold tub. You can pick up one of those for like a couple $100, and it's like, it works so well. Like you can buy, that's what I have for my setup now. And I just have it plugged into like a temperature regulation, so I can set it to whatever temperature I want, and it'll get within like a degree of that. So
nice.
Change out the water once a month, depending on how often you're using it and how much you care about dirty water or not. Yeah.
I'm kidding. Yeah. I'm kidding.
But you can kind of take that to as extreme levels. Like people have like filters and set up and like, these crazy contraptions. And like, there's actually like in the past year been a bunch of companies bring cold tubs onto the market, like direct to consumer. Again, they're, a couple $1,000. Yeah. So it depends on how much you're willing to, like, how bad you want to get into this, I guess.
It's for the show, just to get this background, this little icy background. I typed in like cold water immersion, and the tubs popped up, Josh. And I think that was like the original Stasis.
Yeah, plan. We were on to something. We just weren't able to execute.
Yeah. But they were like $9,000 for these things, man.
They still haven't figured out how to like get it to where it's like mass market type product, but I'm sure eventually someone will figure it out.
Yeah. Well, what's the dangers? Like what should people be aware of going into starting the practice? And I know you've got a hard stop, Josh, so I'll be aware of your time. So we'll jump off at 25 after, but what are some dangers for you?
Cold water. So like hypothermia is probably the number one thing. I think that's where people need to be mindful of, like that shivering state. You know, that's like the first stage of going into hypothermia. So, you know, probably best to do it with like a buddy if you have that available to you. I mean, I think like as far as like a cold shower, you're probably never going to be able to get to the point where the water is cold enough, you know, maybe to kind of reach that state. But yeah, if you're only staying in for a couple of minutes, you know, not any huge like safety hazard. The one biggest thing I have like on mine, if you are using like an actual like chest freezer, is to like unplug it before you get in, right? Electrocuting yourself is my biggest fear.
That's a big one.
So,
yeah. And I guess, you know, also your mental state before you go in, like you don't want to have that altered mental state through some type of alcohol or drugs,
Sure.
So that you're aware of what your body is doing and you can pay attention to that. Awesome. Well, Josh, I saw a question here, and I want to say it's from Karen. It's from Karen Charchan. She says, what are some things, some studies that you're excited about, man?
Yeah, so I think it's all the stuff that's coming out of that Stanford lab right now. Yeah, they seem to be, I highly recommend everyone listen to the Huberman podcast, just a wealth of knowledge as far as human performance, from diet to exercise to nootropics, kind of all over the map. But yeah, I think what they're doing with like the cold exposure piece and like actually developing products that people can easily implement into their like training regimens is going to be a game changer. Because I mean, like, if we're being honest, like cold exposure isn't the easiest thing to do, just because the setup time and stuff, depending on like, you know, what your access is to cold water and stuff like that, it's kind of a pain. But if they're like able to develop these like mitts that just like you slide your hand into and stuff, like that's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Definitely.
What about I know we're good on time. We're good. We got but about the breathing, like one thing that Wim is known for, and we've worked a lot on, was that inner fire breath. And how has that helped to you know, enhance that experience or make the experience more, or heat the body? Like, what about that inner fire breathing, and how often do you use it? Or
yeah, I used to do that. Like I would do kind of Wim Hof style breathing, like how he recommends. So right before I got in the tub, and then my breathing pattern would normally like shift into just like more intentional, long, slow, deep breaths while you're in the cold. But that can really help people get started too, just by, you know, it kind of like increases your body temperature and the blood flow before you get into the cold. So I think it will inhibit that initial shock a little bit. And also kind of just gets you into like kind of like fired up like mind state. I feel like you're like, F this cold water or whatever, like before you get in. And then kind of like after getting out of the tub, I think it's really important to like do some more like down regulation breathing, just to kind of slow everything back down and like come back to like that, you know, homeostasis level, to just like reap all the benefits that I think you get out of being in the cold.
Yeah, I'll add to that, as far also with the breathing. If anybody out there listening hasn't really done a lot of breath work, just getting in touch with your breath, you know, and then sitting in the cold or being in the shower, like that's where I begin to regulate. That's where I begin to, you know, kind of mediate between, you know, the trigger and the potential thinking. I just stay centered, find the breath. And it's really empowering when I'm doing a cold plunge for like 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, that I can just, instead of the cold kind of infiltrating and seem like it's kind of like battling into my body, I can actually find the breath and push back. And there's been times where I've been immersing in the water where I actually can generate heat and kind of feel like I have a force field of warmth around me, because I'm able to find that breath and stay, instead of getting into, you know, a parasympathetic fight or flight kind of, oh my God, you're totally fucked. I mean, because you're, you know, here comes all these stress hormones coming in your body, but to stay calm, to stay relaxed through the breathing, you know, and being very aware, you know, because it's so visceral, the cold, and just maintaining that center, it just has continually shown so many benefits to, and just out, you know, not just in that moment, but outside. Even when I'm like talking on the podcast, one thing that, you know, I get a little nervous, I get anxious, just staying calm, this is kind of my cold immersion now in some ways, just being present, and being okay with what's happening. But it comes back to all that little work and all those little, even taking a 15-second or 1 minute or 30-second cold shower, you get to know yourself on a deeper level. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation today. And really, and bring you on, Josh, as well, because there's something to this cold, and I think it's growing and growing and growing. And I think we're going to see and hear a lot more of it, than we already are, because of the incredible, not just the health benefits, but like the psychological, the emotional intelligence that's gained, I do a cold shower every single time before the show, because I'm like, all right, let's go. I want to get amped up. I want the dopamines in my body. I want to get really excited for the show, and kind of bring more of my, all of these myself forward because of just getting in the cold.
It's also just like a part of, I think, our like primal DNA, right? Like, I mean, we haven't really had these temperature regulated environments for very long. So I think there's something that like taps into that too when you're in the cold. It just like, I don't know, it's like very primal for me, both in like the cold tub and then also like in a sauna situation where there's something there that I feel like we're
extremes.
Missing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Get in our DNA.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Josh, what's the best way for people to find out more about what you're doing or to get in contact with you, man?
Social media, on everything. I think it's just Josh at Josh Duntz. So you have my name typed up there. Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter are kind of like the three things I really use. And then, that's the best way to get in contact with me.
Cool.
Yeah, Duntz is spelled Duntz for those that are listening and not watching right now. So Josh Duntz.
There you go.
Great.
Well, Will, you want to wrap it up with a grounding practice, and then we'll let Josh go.
Yeah, I would love to. Great. So we'll do some breathing right now. Good. Find that seat or take that pause, or just follow along with the breathing for the next few moments. Good. So close the eyes if that's safe. See if you can create a longer spine, just to kind of begin to energize more of the spine by grounding down into your sit bones or into your feet, and then lengthening all the way up through the crown of the head. And we'll start with an exhale, let it go out. And this is some breathing you can do, even be just a few moments, just to kind of control yourself before you go in to that cold shower, that cold plunge. Just take a big inhale, fill all the way up, nice and smooth. Let's exhale out the mouth. As a way just to kind of release some stress and some energy. Let's do a few more of those. Inhale really big through the nose. More breath, more inhale. Exhale, let it go out the mouth through the throat. Good. 3 more. Big breath in. Let it go out. We got 2 more. Big breath in. Out, out, out. And last one. Inhale. Let it go. Let's just take a few more breaths in and out through the nose. Bigger breaths than normal. And just notice as you breathe, just notice how you're feeling without judgment. Getting to that, developing that EQ by just, being observant and witnessing our emotions. And not judging them or trying to change them, but just noticing and being with them. Noticing we're not our thinking, we're not our feelings, we're not our sensations in our body. We're in the center of this magnificent human experience. A couple more moments here. Nice. One more big inhale. And let it go, let it go, let it go. Very nice. Good. When you're ready, you can open the eyes. And Josh, I really, really appreciate your time and your wisdom today. Thank you so much for being part of the show. Great to have you here.
Yes, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great.
You're very welcome.
And real quick, I just want to put out a disclaimer. Hey, none of the three of us are doctors or scientists. So, do your own research on this. And before you start any cold plunge therapy or old cold plunge routine for yourself, make sure you're checking in with a medical professional to take care of yourself. That said, hey, just a heads up, we're going to be migrating Men Talking Mindfulness from LinkedIn Live to YouTube starting next season. So make sure you follow us on YouTube. And we hope to see you over there in the next season live. That is a wrap for this.
I'm going to just say a couple more things, John, if you don't mind, brother. Okay, hey, so if you are going to take a cold plunge or do an emotional or cold shower, hey, take a picture afterwards. Tell us how you're feeling. That'd be amazing to kind of spread the love of the cold immersion. Also, hey, Men Talking Mindfulness merch sale going on right now. I'm going to plug it again, John. Ends November 7th, our holiday style. And also, hey, big fan of the show and you're listening to the show, take a little screenshot right now and post it on your social and spread some more of the Men Talking Mindfulness movement out there for everybody. John and Josh, again, gentlemen, such a pleasure to be here with you all today. And thanks everybody for listening and showing up.
Cheers, guys.
Take care.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks for joining Will and Jon on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.